Hello, this is Ryan from Opposable.
And I'm Alex, I'm a 2D artist at Opposable Games.
So we're going to be having a little talk today about the HTC Vive and more specifically Tiltbrush. So the video in front of you can see now is Alex basically using the HTC Vive and Tiltbrush to create some cool art. So Alex, if you can give us a little rundown, kind of the introductory view on the HTC Vive and Tiltbrush.
So what I'm drawing is actually something from one of our games. Quite often I just have a picture in my head of what I'm going to draw, so I have no guides or anything, but I just start by marking out where I'm going to fill in gaps later on. So this is kind of just like a sketch, as I would do with pencil on a page, using the, I think it's called light setting or something in Tiltbrush. I think it's called Lightbrush. It's very fine. It's good for sketching. I'm sure when this develops there'll be a more sort of sketchy tool that will be good to use. And I'm using something called a mirror, which is I get to place wherever I want and it mirrors whatever I'm doing on one side perfectly on the other, which is really handy. Especially for something that's largely symmetrical.
Have you kind of grown to using it? I mean, just so people watching it know, Alex has had a fair little bit of experience with the Tiltbrush and the Vive now. You can kind of check out some of her other videos where she's using it to create other cool pictures and stuff. But have you kind of got used to it? Is it becoming easier to use?
Yeah, it was fairly intuitive from the beginning, but my going back and looking at the other saved gallery pictures, I do know that I've definitely improved since I started.
I think
it is a lot like painting normally in the real world, but there's a couple of things: getting used to how the tools react to you, getting used to just your limits really within. But it's pretty limitless as far as, getting immersive, nice pictures are concerned. Its limits are more with painting, and you can't get so fine as you can with digital drawing at the moment, but I'm sure that will improve. But yeah, I found that it was fairly easy-ish, but it's definitely something you can keep getting better and better at, especially just thinking in 3D. I think it helps.
Yeah. Even you as a 2D artist, technically speaking.
Technically, yeah, although weirdly I've found that being a 2D artist, it's a bit more intuitive for those of us who are 2D. Right. I think 3D artists work in things like Max and Mayor, and you're thinking about points and numbers, and it's quite, there's a sort of precision to that. But this is a bit more art classy. It's sort of one of the rare times you get to use your whole arm again, and quite a lot.
As you can see.
Yeah, it's me looking ridiculous.
There's quite a lot of bending down, and
it's really physical. I like that though. I prefer doing this, and not being sat at a desk all the time.
It definitely fits the more art cliche view of painting and stuff.
Definitely, yeah. If you go to proper art school, you're told use your whole arm, don't just use your wrist, and actually you end up in my job I just use my wrist. There's no arm movement here, but this I had to get properly physical. You also see me kind of dodging out the way of my own drawing, which is weird because I kind of forget that it's not there, and I can just move through it.
I mean, it's the classic VR, well, I say problem, it's not really a problem, it's more just humorous for people watching, which is people thinking that something exists in the real world, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first did, I think I did a dragon or something, I took the headset off, and I was surprised when it disappeared from my view, which was really weird. I kind of forgot it was stuck in the computer, and it disappeared, and I was like, oh, where's it gone? Oh yeah, of course it's stuck in there.
Especially with something with Tiltbrush, where when you're creating something in front of you, I suppose it's quicker for it to become sort of real.
Yes, and because your head is the camera, you're just seeing your art, and you kind of forget about it. I think your brain lets you just get immersed in it.
So in terms of Tiltbrush itself, like as the program, what kind of stuff do you like about it so far? And I mean, obviously we've talked a little bit about things that you kind of would like to see improve, like the kind of sketching abilities to a degree. I mean, what is it about it that you've kind of enjoyed using?
I think mostly, there's of course little bits that they can improve. I'm sure that will come with it, being able to actually export what you draw and maybe even animate later on. But at the moment it's a great tool just for having fun really, but it's quite, you can get really precise with it if you want. it's not just a gimmick. It's gonna end up being very useful for things like UI and 3D spaces.
Right.
We're still on the forefront of making UI for VR. Nobody really knows quite how to do it yet. Do you plaster it to the person's face, or do you have to move it, or is it contextual? And quite often we may have to make things contextual to the environment you're in. But something like this, I can see myself coming into this room and drawing out where I want buttons to be.
Really? Okay. That is interesting, because I suppose it's difficult for someone like, okay, so basically just to say I'm completely useless and pointless in terms of art. Like, I can't do, like, Tiltbrush is one thing where basically I tried it and I was essentially like, I wish I was good at drawing.
Right, yeah.
Because like all of a sudden I could like make this awesome stuff, and I see what you do and I'm like, I get a bit jealous.
Oh.
But so it's kind of odd to think, so you think there is definitely potential in terms of actually creating in-game assets and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people talk about, questioning whether you'd actually ever be able to, but do you think that there's a possibility there?
Yeah.
I mean, having tried it, I guess
it's very easy to look at it and think, oh god, where are you actually going to be able to use this? Absolutely, especially as you can't really. We're making really nice videos, and it's great that it's getting loads of people are watching it. And however, at the moment we can't use it practically for our game making right now. So yeah, at first you do look at it and think, okay, well, what is it going to do for actual real world applications? But once they've sorted all that out, and I could essentially, it may get to a point where it's good enough that I can model something in low poly or how I want it to look and hand it off to a 3D artist to tune up or animate, essentially making their job easier or faster. And then instead of having to do a 3-point turn of a 2D image, I've already got the 3D image and what it looks like from behind already done. Yeah, so the applications are pretty cool. It's really interesting for me actually to see people like you who don't draw normally drawing it, because Dan, our writer, drew in it, and he drew in 2D in the 3D space, which was great. He was just drawing flat, and I hadn't thought about using it like that. Of course, I think that people at Tiltbrush expected people just to draw in 3D.
Yeah, I find most people do that actually. They draw. I think they draw 2D, and I think 90% of the times I've shown Tiltbrush to people, which is a lot of times, the first thing they do is write their signature. Yeah, it's really which is an interesting thing.
It's like trying out a new pen for the first time. I think everyone has that little, okay, let's do something really easy that I know I can't mess up. And people seem to draw in 2D, but it means when you move your head around, you move yourself around, it looks really weird from another angle, and that's where the 3D part comes in. And actually drawing in 3D. And at the moment, I'm building him up, this character up with just loads of paint strokes. It's not very solid. You have to make it solid yourself with the amount of strokes. So perhaps at some point there will be. I mean, already Oculus is coming up with this kind of sculpting. More like clay, which I think will be really fun. Yeah.
So like for the people that don't know, Oculus is essentially releasing a similar sort of app to Tiltbrush, but rather than painting like this, you are essentially sculpting. So people are speculating that it will be more useful for things like creating game assets and actual like real usable things rather than just art, which Tiltbrush seems more accustomed to. But I mean, in terms of art, I do think there's something about Tiltbrush that just has this like great look about it. The actual art that comes out of it just always looks awesome. I think, I don't know, it's the strokes as well, I suppose.
Well, right now, I just thought actually what you were talking about, I think you're right. I think perhaps the sculpting thing will be more useful to games developers, but there will always be people who want to just watch drawing. Because it is, I've heard people say it's quite mesmerising just to watch it.
It kind of is.
Especially
we are watching it right now, and it's kind of mesmerising.
I'm sort of just watching the art, I'm not watching myself, although it's quite funny to see what I'm doing, but because I wasn't aware of it. But perhaps, there will be still want for this sort of thing, because people, like my friends who don't draw necessarily, or they still like watching something being created and drawn. But that I think there could be a use for it. But like I said, the tools that I'm mentioning probably will have to be implemented if we're going to use it, if Tiltbrush specifically in it. But it might just be a nice concepting thing.
Yeah, in terms of just watching it is obviously amazing. I mean, we've been having talks here at Opposable. We're based in Bristol, and it's kind of quite a city known for its artistic kind of culture. And we've been having talks about doing a sort of Tiltbrush day where we can get some local artists and graffiti artists and people like that to come in and give it a go. So hopefully we'll be doing that at some point. Definitely a nice idea, because kind of the spectacle of it is quite something.
Just to show it off, I think.
Yeah, that too. I mean, it's always nice to show off VR because it's just enjoyable to see people's reactions.
Yeah, absolutely, and nobody's going to have access to this for a bit, so
that's true.
So
who
it's
knows
something
what
that
HTC are doing?
Well, exactly. Who knows? But as for what I'm actually drawing, it's something called a cutter, I believe, from it's sort of one of the first iterations of our game Salvaged, actually, from about 2-ish years ago. He's a kind of ape-like alien. There's a few different enemies you meet on your travels, but he's one of the aliens. And he's just a kind of... I've seen the concept for it, and it was a sort of gorilla crossed with some sort of dinosaur. He looks pretty cool, though. And I'm hoping maybe I'll be able to do some more salvaged creatures in here. I did get his colour wrong, though, which I'm still kicking myself for, because I've done this a couple of times. He's more a sort of orangey colour. But good news is in
looks
this...
pretty good to me.
Yeah, in this world he can be whatever colour.
Yeah, just...
You want really... Actually...
Yeah, go with that. That's good.
A hue shift would be good. That's another tool I'd like.
What would?
A hue shift.
Oh, right.
So if you could grab something and then change its colour. Ooh. So that was actually happening to me, though. That's why I stopped.
Yeah.
Which, that's another thing. That's what really takes you out of the moment, is when you suddenly start joggling around and you remember. That's another thing I'm going to be very interested to see that getting better and better. And, but it's so good already to consider this is like the first iteration that's come out, for us to use. Obviously there must be many prototypes, but the thing we're using right now is very sensitive, and it is reacting to everything I'm doing really well. I
mean, I was saying, I always kind of like looking at the way you sort of manipulate the controller for sort of getting the directions right, and then you sort of twist it about in your hand. I think you got to the point where you don't even notice when you're doing it.
Absolutely,
I
think
think
it just became a sort of brush, really, and the controllers are nice and light, so you don't feel like it's too weighty, and you can see them in real time in front of you, so I could even go across the room and pick one up off the floor if I wanted to, because it's right there, even though it's technically not in my world. And there's the nice, is it chaperone system you mentioned?
Yeah.
So for anyone who's wondering, if I go too close to a wall, a grid actually comes up in my vision, so I won't smack myself into the wall. Which is
not everyone follows it. Not everyone.
I've had a few casualties.
Mainly walls.
Mainly the walls having. Yes, I wonder how long it'll take before something gets broken. But again, it'll be interesting. Where do we go with game design with this? If you've got to keep in mind that people have walls and furniture and stuff that they've got to mind out. If we're doing stuff in terms of making games, do we have to make a clever game where people keep sort of going round and round in circles but don't realise it? Or do we make games that are just puzzle games where you stay in one place and you move stuff? Or do we have to now think of a big sort of track that you roll around on your feet so you can endlessly walk forward? There's going to be real difficult questions that we're going to have to start asking, I think.
Getting to the big stuff.
I know,
Deep
it is.
Well,
this is what I'm thinking. While I'm using it, I'm thinking about this. So.
You don't even have to think about what you're making. Rub it in, why don't you?
Sorry, well, by this point, I'd done him once before, so I'd had a bit of practice.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you've drawn this actual character in 2D probably quite a few times.
Quite a few. I'm very, familiar with these guys now. But it's a great experience for artists and just people who don't do art as well. I think kids have so much fun doing this. I
think if I was young and I did this kind of thing, like I said, it makes me want to be good at drawing, and I think if I was young, that I would want to get into drawing. So it's definitely really positive in that way, and there it is.
And hopefully one day it'll inspire other young people like I was inspired to make games as well.
That's nice. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll be coming out with another video similar to this very soon. See ya.
Bye.